This is the new 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E GT, and it's the high-performance version of the new Ford Mustang Mach-E electric car. I reviewed the regular Mach-E about a year ago, but this is the exciting one. Just under 500 horsepower and 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds. And today, I'm going to review it. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era, now with free listings. You can list your car for free and auction it on Cars and Bids. And we've had some great sales recently, including this 991 Porsche 911 Turbo, which sold for $108,000. This fantastic E46 M3 with a manual transmission sold for just under $26,000. And this C8 Corvette brought just under $93,000. The market is still on fire for these. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool, interesting car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it. Check it out at carsandbids.com. So let's talk Mustang Mach-E GT. Even though Ford Mustang purists hate Ford for using the Mustang name for this vehicle, it is indeed technically a Mustang. And so that means there's a regular version and then there's a GT with more performance. This is the GT, and it starts around $60,000 for about 480 horsepower compared to the regular Mach-E, which starts around $43,000 for roughly 270 horsepower. Of course, the Mach-E GT also comes standard with all-wheel drive and some fantastic modern technology, along with a range of about 270 miles. You can actually get a longer driving range if you go with a cheaper Mach-E model, but the trade-off here is performance. This one sacrifices a little range for some muscle, and as a result, it's one of the quickest crossovers on sale today. And today, I'm going to review it. First, I'll take you on a little tour of the Mach-E GT and show you some of its quirks and features. Then I'll get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'll give it a DOUGSCORE. Alright, time for the quirks and features of the Mach-E GT. Now, I did a full review on the Mach-E last year, and I will link that in the description below for a more comprehensive tour of this car. In this video, I'm just going to focus on what sets the GT apart from the regular model, and I'm going to start with some numbers. This has 480 horsepower and 600 pound-feet of torque, and it'll do 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Now, those are some pretty strong numbers, especially for like a little compact mid-size crossover. Those are real performance car figures, and they're a big jump over the regular Mach-E. The best version of the standard non-GT Mach-E has about 350 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. So this, with 480 horses and 3.8, that is a pretty strong improvement. But of course, the extra performance also comes with extra cost. The Mach-E GT, this one starts around $61,000, whereas a regular Mach-E can range between like $43,000 and $56,000 for its base price. So this is definitely a step up in terms of cost, but also a step up in terms of performance, just like going from a regular Mustang to a regular Mustang GT. Same deal with the Mach-E. Now, I should say, from my perspective, that pricing is a pretty decent value when you consider the performance level and the technology that this car offers. This one, as equipped, is around $64,000, and that's a decent figure for a family-sized crossover that does 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds and goes about 270 miles on fully electric, but it's not as great of a value when you compare it to the Tesla Model Y Performance, which is probably the Mach-E GT's closest competitor. The Model Y Performance is a little more expensive than the Mach-E GT, but only a little, about $1,000, and it's quicker. 0 to 60 in the Model Y is about 3.5 seconds versus 3.8 here, and the Model Y's range is about 300 miles compared to 270 here. So this is a little bit cheaper, but the Model Y definitely has some advantages in terms of performance and range. But as you might expect, the Mach-E GT adds more than just extra power for its extra money. A lot of the other changes are visible, or at least focused, in this area. For one thing, you get bigger wheels, not just larger size, but wider wheels and tires for better grip, which you probably want for all the extra power. You also get red painted brake calipers, as you can see, which make it just look sportier and more aggressive, and you get a lowered ride height, about a 1/2 inch lower than a regular Mach-E, and firmer sort of sport-tuned suspension to go along with that lower ride height. So not only is your center of gravity lower, which will help your handling, but your suspension is actually sport-tuned for even better handling and performance. And then there's the cosmetic stuff. Around back, you already saw one change to the GT, and that would be the GT badge on the tailgate. That replaces a regular Mustang pony logo, and that's how you tell apart the GT models from the rear. Up front, there are some more changes. You have a different front bumper situation with like a front splitter, as you can see down here, and you get a grille. A regular Mach-E has this painted, and it doesn't look like a grille at all, really, but the GT has this black grille, which sort of sets it apart and makes it look like a grille, like a performance car might have to suck in air to the engine. Also notable with the Mach-E GT, the pony logo lights up in front. The regular Mach-E just has a normal Mustang logo. This one, it's lit to, again, distinguish the GT from the regular car. Kind of interesting. With all that said, I gotta be honest, looking at the exterior changes to this, I just don't see enough to really make this feel like a GT. You get a distinctive wheel design, but frankly, it doesn't look all that good or all that performance-y, and everything else just looks like a regular Mach-E, only some subtle changes here and there. Even on the side, you don't have a GT badge. The regular Ford Mustang is a big 5.0 to let everybody know what it is. This thing says Mach-E 4X, which is kind of cryptic and nobody really knows what that means. It'd be nice to see a little more badging or some more visual differentiation on the outside showing that this is a GT. As it sits right now, it's kind of a cool sleeper, but it also doesn't have any of that muscle you'd hope to see in a Mustang GT. But anyway, next up we move inside, and actually there are even fewer GT changes to the interior than there are to the exterior, although you do see one when you open the door sill says GT, reminding you this isn't just the regular Mach-E. Same deal on the center armrest here. You have GT printed into the leather, which looks very nice, and you have sport seats in here. You have some nice, more heavily bolstered sport seats that'll keep you in place should you decide to bring your GT onto the racetrack. One other important item to note is the drive mode situation in here. GT models get an extra drive mode. In regular versions of the Mach-E, the sport mode is called unbridled, which is sort of like a horse term because it's the Mustang. Well, the GT also has something called unbridled extend. If you switch that on, the all-wheel drive system goes more rear biased for theoretically better handling, and the brakes improve. They lose their regen capability, and instead they're focused on just being performance brakes. And the steering tightens up a little bit to be a little more exciting and a little sharper. Now, when you're in this mode, the car is actually a little slower than in just regular unbridled, because some battery power is going to other performance systems throughout the car, not just straight line acceleration. But the theory is this is the mode you would use if, like, you're on a racetrack and you want to get the best possible performance, not just in a straight line, but overall from your Mach-E GT. Now, it's worth noting that if all the upgrades to the GT aren't quite enough for you, Ford has something extra for people who want even more. It's called the Performance Package, and it costs around $5,000 extra, and it comes with a few more extra performance benefits. One is extra torque, around 35 pound-feet more than the regular GT, which will drop your 0 to 60 time from 3.8 seconds down to 3.5 seconds and make this feel even faster than it already is. Performance Package vehicles will also include summer tires standard, so you'll get more performance, better grip from the tires, though if you live in a cold climate, you'll have to switch to winter tires in the winter. Cars with the Performance Package will also get better brakes, obviously for better stopping capabilities, and a retuned all-wheel drive system for a little better grip. Although with all of these upgrades, the range drops a little bit more down to 260 miles, but for the people who get the Performance Package, that trade-off will probably be worth it for the extra performance. But there you go. That's a general overview of the upgrades for the GT model. Of course, another one is driving experience, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, I want to touch on some of the more interesting quirks and features that are worth covering in the Mach-E, starting with getting inside. You don't have a traditional door handle here, as you can see. You walk up, no real handle. Instead, there's a button on this piece of black trim. If you press that, there's a little handle below it you can use to pull and then open the door. And that's how you open the door in the Mach-E. Very strange. This little button is an electronic release that pops the door open and you pull it from there. Rather weird, but not as weird as the rear door, which is actually even stranger. Again, you find no traditional door handle in back, but you will see a button hidden in this black trim. You press the button and then the door pops out, and it cannot immediately be shut. They have a little like peg in the door that makes certain you can't push it, open it up, and then accidentally instantly close it. Instead, it sits there open, ready for you to reach your hand in, grab it, and pull it open the rest of the way. If you open it just a few inches, you can of course immediately close it, but when you first open the door, they make sure it doesn't accidentally close on you right away with this little temporary peg that pops out and keeps the door in place. A very unusual door opening situation in this car. And next up, moving on to the interior for more quirks and features in this car, and mainly I want to talk about the screen situation. Now, like I said, I covered this and a lot of other Mach-E stuff in more depth in my regular Mach-E review, which I will link below, but for a general overview, this screen is huge, absolutely massive here in the center, and frankly, it's pretty good. Very responsive to your touch, very intuitive and easy to use, and it's so big that it can incorporate a lot of different things at once. So you can have several different items on there at one time without having to switch between various things just to see like your radio and then your nav screen, all that. You can have it all displayed at once, which is nice. You got your climate controls permanently on the bottom of this screen, and everything, like I said, works pretty intuitively. Frankly, it's pretty similar stuff to Tesla, the Model 3 and the Model Y, this giant center screen, but one big advantage, at least in my opinion, that the Mach-E has over the Model 3 and the Y is there's also a screen in front of the steering wheel, a gauge cluster screen. It's very small, this narrow horizontal screen, as you can see, but it shows you all of your really important information directly in your line of sight. So whereas Model 3 and Model Y, everything is on the center screen, in Mach-E, you have this important information directly down from where you're already looking when you're driving the car, and you don't have to look over to the center to see simple stuff like your speed or whether your turn signals are on or what gear you're in. That kind of stuff is in this screen directly in front of the steering wheel, which I really like. Now, next up, I move on to the back seat in the Mach-E, and I gotta say, I've always been pretty impressed with the back seat of this car, largely because it's roomy. Obviously, I'm a fairly tall adult, but I can sit back here with no real issue. My knees aren't up against the front seat, largely due to this sort of curved design of the front seat back. It gives me good knee room and back. But more importantly, my headroom is pretty good. I'm sitting back here and my head is not right up against the ceiling, which is kind of a surprise given this car's kind of fastback teardrop shape. Most electric cars have this shape for aerodynamic purposes, but it usually comes at the expense of rear headroom. But in the Mach-E, they've done kind of a cool thing. You can see the teardrop shape, the body color and the design, but if you look carefully behind that teardrop shape, there's like a black piece that actually comes up a little bit higher, and that's kind of a punch out for rear seat headroom. So even though the car looks like it has this cool fastback shape, there's actually this sort of hidden trick to the design that adds a little more headroom back here, which is a pretty cool touch, and that makes this car reasonably comfortable for several adults, which obviously I like. Now, one other interesting item is the cargo area. You can see, looking at the bottom of the cargo area, it's pretty big, wide, flat, you can get a lot of stuff here, but going higher up, this is where the teardrop shape does start to come into play. If you want to put some large, bulky box back here, you might run into trouble because the roofline kind of comes down in the back and really sort of steals some of the upper cargo space, but decent cargo room and fairly standard for vehicles like this. And finally, before I go drive this car, I want to talk styling. Now, I already mentioned some of my disappointment that the GT model doesn't stand out a little bit more, but I also want to discuss general styling for this vehicle. I'm going to start by talking about Tesla. I like Tesla vehicles, and I especially like the Model 3 and the Model Y. I think they're fantastic, but I don't really think they're good looking. They don't have a great standout, beautiful design in any way, and I've always felt the Mach-E, frankly, looks a little nicer. It has a little bit more personality, a little bit more character, and a bit of a tie-in to the regular Mustang, which is a car that obviously a lot of people have a lot of emotional attachment to. I think between the Model Y and this car, there are pros and cons in a lot of areas, but this car wins the styling battle. Now, granted, that's subjective, you may feel differently, but that's my opinion. More importantly, probably is the driving experience battle, so let's get the Mach-E GT out on the road and see how it drives. All right, driving the Mach-E GT. I have been very excited to do this. Even though this is one of my Sunday videos where I sort of do like shorter content about a car that I've already like reviewed, like the regular Mach-E, This is an important one. This is an important car, in part because I think you could make a pretty good objective argument that the Model Y Performance is probably the best electric car on sale. From a pricing standpoint, practicality, and performance, like the combination of all that stuff, it's just got kind of the best overall position. So now this is here to take on that Model Y Performance, and I've been very curious, is it gonna be as good or better? And I think the answer, unfortunately, is not exactly a straight and easy yes or no. It's kind of an it depends. Let me get into it. Okay, so from a pricing perspective, like I mentioned, this is a little bit cheaper than the Model Y Performance. And when you look at it on paper, it offers a little bit less, slightly less range, 230 versus like 300 for Model Y Performance, and Model Y Performance 0 to 60 in 3.5, this 0 to 60 in 3.8. So this has like less range and less performance. But there are some caveats that kind of go along with that. One, the range thing. Every time I review an electric car, the automaker is careful to tell me that, you know, something like 90% of people drive less than 20 miles a day, and so the range doesn't really matter all that much. And there's some truth to that. When you think about it, the difference between 270 miles of range and 300 miles of range for most people on a day-to-day basis doesn't really matter all that much. If it does matter, obviously the Y Performance is probably the one you want. Next, we move on to that 0 to 60 number. Well, Model Y Performance is quicker. There's no real question about that. Based on the numbers provided, it's a little quicker. But this is one that really irks me. I like Tesla. I actually love Tesla. I've positively reviewed virtually every Tesla product that I've driven. I think they're great cars and they're really, really excellent. But Tesla people, the ones who viciously defend Tesla on Twitter, they have this thought that 0 to 60 time is a car's performance. And anybody who's actually into cars and into driving knows that's not true. A lot of these Tesla people are coming out of Priuses. They don't know much about driving dynamics and performance in corners and on racetracks. The Model Y Performance is faster, but this car is a better drive, period. And I would rather give up 0.3 of a second 0 to 60. You're still doing it in 3 something. It's still incredibly fast. But I would rather give up a little 0 to 60, but boy, does this feel quick, and get what this car offers, which is great handling. And this is something that Y Performance just doesn't quite compete with. This car, now I'm gonna upset the Mustang people, it feels like a Mustang. You know, I drove this car on like a little track that Ford had set up, the non-GT version, and it drives amazingly. And I've had this one for a few days. I've been driving it around. The steering is tight. It feels great. The handling is really good. Ford is able to keep all the weight low in this car because of the batteries. It drives really well. I hate to say this, but it almost drives like a sports car, which is like a terrifying thing to say when you're sitting in an electric crossover. You'll upset a lot of people, but it drives really well. But I gotta tell you, like from a driving perspective, this is definitely the better of the two cars. And there are a couple of other benefits that the Mach-E offers over the Y. One, I gotta say, the screen in front of the steering wheel is just really nice. I get that the Y people have kind of gotten used to it, but even most Tesla people complain about that. They wish there was a screen directly in your line of sight that you could look at. Mach-E has it, and it's great. The other benefit of Mach-E, and I sort of hesitate to say this, but it's true, Teslas, when it comes to fixing them after accidents or unplanned repairs, they're challenged. I have a lot of friends with Teslas. Some of them tell me crazy stories. They go to make a appointment at the service department to get simple stuff taken care of. The service department doesn't have any slots until a month out, 30 days, 4 or 5 weeks out. That stuff doesn't quite happen as much with brands like Ford that have a better parts producing operation, that have a more streamlined servicing and dealership network, and that can kind of be a big deal. And I know several people who have had Teslas were really excited to be on that bandwagon, tweeting about it and all that stuff, and then they got rid of them afterwards because it just wasn't a workable experience in that sense. With that said, you're probably wondering, which one would I get if it was me choosing between the two? And the answer is, I don't really know. Y Performance also has better driver assist technology. This car has Ford's Blue Cruise, which is good, but it's not as good as Y Performance. It's pretty good though. It'll keep the car going, turning, steering, etc. But Y Performance will change lanes for you, and I just find that system to be just a little sharper and a little less lazy. For me, what I do, longer distances driving, and that driver assist thing I use a lot, I would probably go with the Y, but I would actually rather have this car. Like, it's more fun, it's more exciting, there are things I like about it better, but for my specific life experience where I do a lot of long distance driving. I've done 25,000 miles in my daily car over the last year. Having the extra range and having the better driver assist would probably be what I would go for. But I'd be driving my Y Performance, and every time I would see one of these, I'd say, damn, I wish I had that. Like, I want that more, but I would make the practical choice. But I don't know, I think they're both super compelling cars, and I think both of these are some of the very best electric cars on sale today from a total perspective of price, practicality, technology, performance. This car and Y Performance are just about as good as it gets. And so that's the 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E GT. This is a pretty good all-around car. Excellent performance, good steering and handling, and great acceleration. And it's got good technology, and it's practical, and it's relatively affordable, and has good range. Honestly, short of the really expensive electric car stuff like the Model S Plaid and the Porsche Taycan, this might just be my favorite all-around electric car yet. And now it's time to give the Mach-E GT a DOUGSCORE. And the DOUGSCORE is here, 68 out of 100, placing the Mach-E GT at the very top of this list, tying the Model Y Performance. There are a lot of good electric cars out there. The Volkswagen ID.4 is a nice value, the Audi e-tron is luxurious, but nothing else is as great all around as the Y Performance and the Mach-E GT. If you look closely, you can see these two get to their identical scores in different ways. The Mach-E gets an extra point in styling, quality, and handling, while the Y adds a point in cool factor, features, and acceleration. Regardless of which you choose, the Mach-E GT and the Model Y Performance are the best overall electric cars on sale today.